And we are live for another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson. And Andrew, we are almost at that point in the season. Selection Sunday is this upcoming Sunday, and now we get to the good part of college basketball. Conference tournament play is upon us. We've already seen some of the mid-majors get their conference tournaments underway, but now for the Power 6 conferences, they get underway. They just started a little bit earlier today for some of the Power 6 conferences, as well as a couple other conferences that we'll be talking about tonight. But we are that close to getting that much closer away from finding out who makes the field of 68 in this year's NCAA tournament.
Well, what do you mean the good part of college basketball? It's always the good part. There's never a bad part. I
I
guess the only
mean,
bad part is the day after the final championship.
yeah. I meaning that it's always like I wouldn't
We're
say
starting to hit the apex right now.
yeah. You're hitting like the peak of college basketball because you and I both know this is March is a great time for this tournament. We love the tournament each and every year that it comes around, and talking about stuff like that we're going to be talking about tonight is one of the big reasons why we love college basketball for the way it is. All this, looking at resumes and seeing what these teams have to do to make the NCAA tournament, it's a really fun aspect of, talking and just watching the game itself. And it leads to some magical moments as we've seen in March Madness before.
Yeah, and hopefully we see more magical moments. And I don't think we have to waste any time. We can go straight into, I guess, a conference tourney breakdown now. We're going to break down the Power Six, and we're going to take a look at a couple of mid majors. The mid majors we're looking at are potential two bid leagues at least.
And
So that's
potential
going to
bid
be
stealer leagues as
Yeah,
well.
A10 is probably the weakest out of these nine. However, with the way these teams have been playing, such as Loyola Chicago, which they will not be an at-large team, but if you're winning like 17 of your last 20, and you have a team like Dayton that's automatically in the field no matter what, they're probably in as an 8 seed no matter what. It's good to take a look at that. The American, which has a potential couple bid steals in there, and the Mountain West, which could send up to 6 teams to March, which should be unprecedented for that conference as it looks
Right.
towards maybe becoming a Pac-12 replacement in the near future.
Right. So we have a lot to talk about and talking about what these conferences bring to the table and who can get into the NCAA tournament as itself. So let's go into first the three non-power six conferences that we think, going into this week are going to be something to look forward to. And we'll start off with the A10. I think a conference that has right now has the logistic opportunity. Obviously, right now it looks like Dayton is a lock. And I would say Richmond would probably be a lock too, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I don't think Richmond's a lock yet.
Do you think they have to do some work?
I know they've had a very strong.
Right now,
Uh,
they are a 12 seed in the latest bracketology bracket that I'm looking
they're
at.
assuming they're going to win that tournament,
Right,
though, so I
that's an
don't think they're a
AQ
lock yet.
qualifier. Right.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say they're going to qualify. I think every team here needs to win besides Dayton.
So Dayton, pretty much it seems, is the quote unquote essential favorite to win this conference. And you look at what they have to go into the bracket. Obviously, right now they are the 3 seed in this bracket. As we saw, Richmond is the number 1. Then it's Loyola Chicago, the number 2 seed. Those are two teams that are obviously looking to make work and looking to get that automatic qualifier to get into the NCAA tournament and potentially steal a bid from one of those teams that are trying to get in to the last 4 in. Then you see a team like Massachusetts has had themselves a pretty good season as well. They have a 4 seed. I think they've won 20 games on the season. So it's been a good year for the Minutemen. VCU, we know what they've done before in years past from the tournament. They could you never know. They could make a run in this tournament as well. And you even have teams like Duquesne and George Mason who have also won 20 games on the year, as well as St. Joseph that finished with 19 wins. There is a potential of, you have the top 9 seeds could all realistically make a case to winning this American, I should say American, but to winning this Atlantic 10 conference championship.
Yeah, like you said, VCU has done some damage in March for not having their greatest year by their standards. This is a poor year for them. They have some lofty standards for mid-major. And Dayton, obviously, the only team I think will get an at-large here. They have a couple quad 1 wins. They have no bad losses. And they have to win over other bubble teams as well, such as St. John's and Cincinnati. So that will keep them in the picture as well. Say, hey, if St. John's is in, why aren't we in? Yada, yada, yada. So that'll help them, their case, keep them in.
Right.
But I want to talk about UMass here for a second because they're going to be in the Mid-American. They're switching to the MAC next year.
Right.
And it's going to be kind of sad because it seems like UMass basketball was struggling for all this time. I know they have some very great teams and great coaches and great players like Marcus Camby back in the '90s. They had some great teams, but they kind of lost their footing. And I feel like just as they're getting their footing back in the A10, they're gonna be switching conferences. I know it's gonna be. I know this is football related, but this could be UMass's last dance as an A10 member. So that's something to take a look out for.
Yeah, and I mean they'll have an opportunity to win this conference tournament in for their last season here in the Atlantic 10. And as the 4th seed, they would be playing the winner of VCU and Fordham. Fordham beat Davidson earlier today. For the Richmond Spiders, they will be taking on the winner of George Mason and St. Joseph. That could be a tricky game for the Spiders because obviously with George Mason and St. Joseph's nearing 20 wins on the year, you never know. That could be a game that where Richmond has to watch themselves. And then we'll see also the 3 seed that we mentioned is Dayton. They would take on the winner of Duquesne and St. Louis. And then for the 2 seed Loyola Chicago, they would take on the winner of St. Bonaventure and LaSalle. So you see these teams in the seedings and where they're currently matched up and where they could potentially face each other in the upcoming stages of this tournament, Johnson. Who do you think comes out of the Atlantic 10 with this automatic qualifier, gets into the NCAA tournament? Does Dayton get it done and help the bubble teams that are on the bubble right now trying to, avoid any of those bid stealer teams winning this conference?
I hope they get it done for my sake. And I believe I just want to correct myself. UMass is their second to last season. I think they become a full member in 2025. So I have one last season
Okay.
before that. But take a look at this at the seeding here. Dayton is the 3rd seed. They will most likely play Duquesne. I think they'll beat Duquesne. So I think the question is whether they beat Loyola Chicago. I think every Flyer fan should be rooting for St. Bonaventure because that is the way better matchup, and I think the Bonnies could upset Loyola Chicago. Again, another really great mid-major team. So if it comes down to Dayton versus UMass or Richmond, I think Dayton will get it done. I think the true test is the semifinals matchup against Loyola Chicago.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I think Loyola Chicago and Dayton are on a collision course for that semifinal matchup. And on the top side of things, I really could see a scenario where Richmond doesn't make it out of their first matchup with George Mason and St. Joseph's. I don't think it's going to be that easy. And even if they do, facing VCU or UMass in their next matchup won't be easy as well. I could very well see a scenario where UMass goes all the way to the final game and makes it to the championship game.
Man, that would be really something to see. I certainly hope not because I need stability in my tournament. The
Yeah.
St. John's guy, so I don't need any bid steals out there. But I'm gonna say Dayton is going to be the winner here.
So you go with
Um,
Dayton?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a mush, but Dayton. If I think the winner of the Dayton Loyola Chicago game will be the winner of this tournament.
I
So
don't
we go with
disagree with
Dayton.
that whatsoever. Um, I think for our purposes, I shouldn't take Dayton as well, just in case, because that if they do lose, then we'll be blamed for that happening.
Yep, it's
Um,
the mush.
so for all intent purposes, I'm gonna go with Loyola Chicago to win this Atlantic 10. Obviously, I've loved what they've done in years prior for their tournament runs. I mean, their Cinderella runs have been fantastic in the NCAA tournament before. Maybe they get back in this year. Obviously, for a St. John's fan like us, we are hoping that it's no
No
offense, but
offense, guys, but
yeah
if
we
we had
want
just
to we
beaten
want to
If Creighton didn't get a BS call on us, or if we just finished the game versus Seton Hall or Marquette, we wouldn't be in this. But here we are. So sorry, guys.
yeah. So I'll go Loyola Chicago. I still think they could win it regardless, and I think even if you're a St. John's fan, you're hoping for Dayton to win. I still think as long as you take care of business against Seton Hall, and we'll talk about that later on the show, but as long as you take care of business in that game, you should be fine come Selection Sunday. But so those are our picks for the Atlantic 10. Let's now move on to our next conference, and that conference being the American Athletic Conference. And this has been another conference where, you had going into the season, obviously, Florida Atlantic was the top tier team. Obviously, they made the Final Four last season. A lot of people picked them to win this conference outright and to make it in to another automatic qualifier for the NCAA tournament. But they are not the 1 seed going into this tournament, as South Florida, surprising everyone this season, winning the regular season championship for the American Athletic. They get the number 1 seed in this American Athletic. But as we both know, Johnson, it will take them winning this entire bracket for them to make it into the NCAA tournament, as their resume, compared to a couple other teams, isn't really as good.
Yeah, South Florida is not a tournament team right now. I don't have him in. A lot of people don't have him in. When you take a look at their resume, what is really their one key win here? If you had to pick one of their wins, I can't. None of this stand off the paper for me. I mean, I think even they say that FAU is a lock. I only think they're locked because they were ranked so high in the beginning of the year. Because when you look at Florida Atlantic's resume too, I know they have a couple good wins versus a tournament team in Arizona and a bubble team in A&M. But other than that, they have a couple nasty quad 2 losses against Brighton, FGCU. And we take a look at South Florida, net of 78. The only true quad 1 win is against Memphis, and they have losses at home against Central Michigan and Maine. So to me, none of these teams are locked for the tournament. However, if you're going to make the argument, it's going to be Florida Atlantic that gets the at-large, depending how the rest of this bubble plays out. So this is how I look at the tournament, right? I want to put some emphasis on that 2-7 game because I'm assuming, and again, you can't assume everything, that South Florida will have a easy win to the course to the in the quarterfinals to get to the semifinals, and then if UAB, if the University of Alabama Birmingham plays South Florida, I could see that easily being an upset game. I don't trust them to really win the tournament, but they have some really great talent. Lexel Landenberg, I'm probably butchering that. First team all conference, great power forward, rebounding machine, scoring machine, great player. And then if say South Florida can get through that, if they go on to the championship, I'm looking at the 2-7 game potentially between North Texas and Florida Atlantic. Now, I'm not saying North Texas is a bad team, but they're certainly not a great team. But what they can do is wear down opponents with this style of play. It's a very grit and grind style, and I think that would really clash well against Florida Atlantic. So if North Texas can beat Tulane and get to Florida Atlantic, I think they have a real good shot of winning that game. Not looking at the 49ers, the Charlotte 49ers to win this, or the Memphis Tigers. I think these guys are kind of long shots. But if I had to pick a team to win this tournament, I'm going to go with FAU. The safe pick, obviously. But it wouldn't surprise me if North Texas was able to kind of squeak this out.
I'm looking at this tournament for two things, and it's on the top side of the bracket. And remind me, and you can remind me, Johnson. I'll bring this up to you. South Florida, their last game of the season, who did they lose to?
Oh, geez. Have they lost to someone not great? I know that. Who was it?
It would be Tulsa, the team that
It
they
was
could
Tulsa.
potentially play in the second round of this American Athletic Conference tournament. So there's a potential that South Florida could be one and done. Now, do I think that will happen? I don't think so. However, I know it's been a rough year for them. I do think Penny Hardaway will get his team to the championship game. I think they could get past Rice or Wichita State. It's not the same Wichita State we've known from years prior. I think they could get past UAB as well. And even if they played South Florida, I think Penny and his company will be able to get past the South Florida team that doesn't really have that much experience so far when it comes to these conference tournaments. I think it's a little bit early for the Bulls. Now, unfortunately, Johnson, I'm going to have the mush here because I'm going to take Florida Atlantic as well. It's kind of, it's really hard to not pick them to win this because they are, as I mentioned, the quintessential favorite to win this conference tournament. But I would not be surprised if Memphis, gets all the way to the championship game and plays Florida Atlantic for that title game. And Memphis is one of those teams again that could be a potential bid sealer for any of the final four teams trying to get into the tournament.
I like it. And I just want to say that Florida Atlantic played 2 games against North Texas. They won both games, but they were both 3 and 4 point games, respectively. So
So yeah,
don't really think that it's going to be very hard to beat this team 3 times. And it seems like they do.
we'll have to see. I mean, I think that conference starts tomorrow. I think their first games get underway, so we'll see how all that unfolds. But now, you mentioned this conference earlier. They could potentially have 6, maybe even 7. Well, they definitely have 7 at-large teams right now when it comes to potentially making the NCAA tournament, and that is the Mountain West. The Mountain West has certainly put up a great season overall and has really made a namesake as they're trying to get a bunch of teams into the tournament, and they have a really good chance at doing so. Obviously, Utah State won the outright regular season title. They are the number 1 seed for the conference. Then it's rounded out by Nevada as the 2 seed, Boise State as the 3, UNLV as the 4, San Diego State 5, Colorado State 6, and New Mexico 7. Those 7 teams all could realistically make a bid to try to get into the tournament if they can make a run here in the Mountain West Conference tournament. But for a team like, let's say, Colorado State and New Mexico, teams that are on the bubble, they will have to play from round 1 and have to go all the way from first day action to get into that championship game.
Yeah, when you take a look at these teams, Utah State is, I want to say they're the favorite, but they're really not the favorite. I don't have the odds in front of me,
I
but
will bring you up the odds in a second. I have that.
yes.
I actually have that with me.
Yeah, so I want to go into a couple of these teams. Locks for the tournament right now would be Utah State, San Diego State, Nevada, Boise State. Those are teams 100% are in this tournament, as well as San Diego State. Then you take a look at New Mexico and Colorado State. New Mexico is kind of on the favorable side of the bubble. They're in a lot of brackets. They're out in a
Yeah.
lot of brackets, probably one of those 50 teams. And Colorado State needs some work. The bid stealer I'm looking at here is UNLV. This is happening in Las Vegas on their home court. I'm imagining they're not going to have a lot of people traveling into Vegas. It's not one of those tournaments like the Big East where it gets everyone from the conference. You know, people from Nebraska fly in, people from uh, Wisconsin fly in, and obviously if you're in the Northeast, you're taking the Amtrak up, or you're driving up from Philadelphia, New York, from Connecticut. That's 17 hours away. Providence. So UNLV is playing on their home court, and they have a favorable draw against San Diego State and Utah State. This is potentially one of the bid steals here, but I'm going to go with the Boise State Broncos to win this tournament.
Wow.
And
Okay.
this is why I love the way Boise State plays. They play a methodical. It's a little methodical, so it can get boring, but they don't go on a lot of runs. They don't give up any runs. It's just kind of punch you in the mouth type of basketball. We're going to grind this out. We're going to score 65 points. You're going to score 61 points. And I like that when conference tournament play starts and the game slows down when all the marbles are on the line. That's the kind of team you want. It bit me in the ass a couple of years ago, Virginia, but they won a national championship eventually. So hey, it might work here too. So give me Boise State to win this.
So I'll give you the conference odds, and this is off of FanDuel. So this is what they have as the odds. The favorite to win this tournament is San Diego State. They are
Okay.
plus 240 odds. Then it's rounded out next by three at the same tie at second place of Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah State. Boise State comes in at fourth with plus 700 odds. They're all at plus 500. So San Diego State is the favorite. And I understand why they'd make them the favorite. Obviously, they had that magical run last season as well, making it all the way to the Final Four. Um, you never know. Maybe they can make another run this season because they have the tournament experience.
And they also beat St. Mary's and Gonzaga, so I think that's a big deciding factor there too.
Right. And you mentioned it. They have a tough game with UNLV, who you mentioned could be a bid stealer for the NCAA tournament. It would really be tough to pick against San Diego State because I really feel like when it comes to conference tournament play, you
Just
want the.
remember,
Yeah, go
they
ahead.
lost to UNLV on the road in the same arena earlier in the year.
That's true, but you could make all men's right if you could get that, get that revenge game. And I think the Aztecs will get it done. I think they could beat them, get that revenge, and essentially eliminate all hope for the Rebels for the season. It's been a nice ride to see UNLV back, getting some nice wins after we know their previous history from decades ago. But for me, looking at it, I think Utah State, Nevada, even if they were to, lose their games, I think they're fine and make the tournament. Um, I would go with San Diego State in this one. I'm going to take the Aztecs to win it. For me, it really comes down to experience. If you have the experience and you can get, what you've done before in years prior, it all works out in the end of the day for these teams. And I think for San Diego State, not a lot of people are looking at them as the biggest threat. Obviously, they might be the odds-on favorite to Vegas, but a lot of people are looking at them as a 5 seed and saying, is this really the same team that we saw last season that made it all the way into the Final Four? No, but they still have some players from that team from last season that could get them back into the NCAA tournament, and I think they get it done and win the Mountain West.
All right, so I think that brings into the Pac-12 now, and I've got the
Yes, sir.
Pac-12 bracket in front of me. Anyone who got the official bracket, the Pac-12 is just giving up, man. Their senioritis. It was done in like Times New Roman in like Microsoft Word. They're giving up. But anyway, also happening in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena. Arizona is the heavy favorite here as the 1 seed. You have Washington State as the 2, Colorado as the 3, Oregon as the 4, UCLA as the 5, Utah as the 6, Cal as the 7, Washington, not Washington State, as the 8,
Huskies.
USC as
Yep.
the 9, Stanford as the 10, Arizona State as the 11, and Oregon State at the 12. Uh, Traditional brackets here: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 all get buys, and then the 8 through 11 seeds play in the first round.
Yeah, I think for me, you look at this conference as well. Right now, what would we say? We would say Arizona, we know, is a lock. Washington State is also a lock. Colorado, as of now, is a last four in. So they're on the right side of the bubble to some people. Some people, maybe they're not. And then Oregon, obviously, we know they have work to do.
And Utah. Utah is a little
And
bit
Utah,
further out
yes, I
now,
forgot
but
about that. Yeah,
Utah
Utah,
was one of the last 4, and they lost the last 2 games, I
well,
believe.
yes, they did. And the good thing for Utah is they can make amends for that. If they can obviously win their first round game against the Sun Devils, and then they would play Colorado in the second round, and that's an essentially potential win and in game for one of those two teams to get into the NCAA tournament, depending on how everything else goes. But that could be a scenario that we see come up with this tournament. But, and I know you're going to hate this, Johnson. The team that I could look forward to that might make a run, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but they've been playing really good as of late. USC could be a bid stealer for this tournament.
Nope.
I know, obviously, it would not be good for any of the metrics for
Whatever
the
bet
teams in
you're
the
looking,
bubble.
I'll double them. I'll double whatever odds you're getting because I'm that confident.
They are plus 2,000 odds.
I'll give you plus 4,000 right now.
No, I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm not picking them to win the conference. I'm just saying we just saw them beat Arizona a couple days ago, so they would have a potential rematch in the second round if they were to get past Washington Huskies. But they have enough talent. But another team to look out for, maybe UCLA. Obviously, it's not been the same year for Mick Cronin and his guys, but you never know when it comes tournament time. They could obviously get a run going. And as the 5 seed, obviously, if they were able to win their matchup with Oregon State, then they would get, and in my opinion, a favorable matchup with Oregon in the second round. So UCLA and USC are probably the two teams to watch out for in this tournament. But for me to pick, I think it's hard to not pick Arizona. They are a minus 150 odd to win this tournament, followed up by Colorado, Washington State, and then Oregon, and then Utah, and then I mentioned USC. I think it's just too hard not to pick Arizona to win this tournament. They have been a really good team all season. They're trying to make a bid for a number 1 seed, but I think that loss to USC probably hurts them at the end of the day. They could definitely get a 2 seed if they win this conference tournament. I think they get it done and move on to March.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Arizona. That's the logical pick here. I'm gonna say Utah's the bid stealer. I know they're still
Okay.
on the bubble technically, but they're like 8 teams out at this point. They're like there's
Yeah,
the first
they need a
four, then
lot of
there's the
help.
next four, and then there's the next four after that. They're in that next four. So give me Utah because they have favorable draws against Arizona State, then Colorado. 2 teams I think they could definitely beat, and then it's just about whoever gets to the finals at that point.
Right.
So I think they have a favorable pathway to the tournament here.
So we'll have to see what happens for the Pac 12. It's last year of incarnation for this bracket for that conference. So now we move on to the ACC, and it's been a very unusual year in the ACC. This is a conference that, at most right now, Johnson could potentially only get 2 teams into the NCAA tournament. Virginia right now is on the bubble, as well as Pitt, Wake Forest, and even teams like Syracuse, I guess, but not. They would have to do a ton of work. We mentioned this a couple weeks ago.
Syracuse has to win the tournament.
Yeah, they will have to probably win the tournament, but Clemson obviously is another team that it looks like they will be in the tournament as well. So right now you have 3 locks to make the tournament, and then Virginia and Wake Forest are fighting for their bubble lies because Virginia is no sure of a lock to make this NCAA tournament. So you look at what the conference brings to you. Obviously, North Carolina winning their outright regular season title. They are the 1 seed, then followed by Duke at the number 2, Virginia number 3, Pitt number 4. The 5 seed is going to be Wake Forest. Then it's Clemson at 6, Syracuse at 7, the 8 seed Virginia Tech, 9 seed is Florida State, the 10 seed is NC State, who defeated Louisville today. The 11 seed is Boston College, who currently has a lead over number 14 seed Miami. The 12 seed was Notre Dame. They defeated Georgia Tech today, who was the 13 seed. So you look at this bracket, Johnson, so far, we've already had a couple matchups now decided today that will now implicate what happens tomorrow. We'll have Notre Dame versus Wake Forest, who we saw a couple weeks ago. The Irish did defeat Wake Forest, so that would be really bad for Wake Forest if they lost again. NC State will take on Syracuse, and if Boston College can hold on against Miami, they would take on Clemson in the second round.
All right, so this is a Duke or a UNC winner right here. Duke number one, UNC. I'm sorry, Duke number two, UNC number one in this bracket. Uh, I'm gonna have to go with Duke here because I feel like even though they don't have Coach K, John Schuyler is still a great coach. Still have some of that mojo.
They're the
Game
defending
is
ACC champs, so
yeah, they're defending champs, so I can't really bet against them. So I would have to go with Duke here. When it comes down to bid stealers.
I think Syracuse
Would
for
you?
me. I know it sounds biased from me coming from that, but I think Syracuse could give a run. They have
Because
good
I think they
players on
could
that
lose to
team.
NC State. That's the thing. I think
They
they could lose to
could.
NC
They're
State.
they're the weird team where they could easily lose to a team like NC State, but then they have like Judah Mintz, a guy like that, and they could easily win that game. And then who knows, could give Duke a
I
run for
would
their
look
money.
at Pitt actually as a bid stealer here.
Well, they need to be that bit stiller because right now they're on the wrong side of the bubble.
Yeah, they're on the wrong side of the bubble. They would need to beat Wake Forest. They would need to beat North Carolina. I think getting to the championship game gets them in the tournament.
Absolutely.
So they don't need to win it, but that's the bid steal I'm looking out for here.
Uh, I will agree. I think Duke is for me the favorite as well. It's really tough to beat a team three times in the season. I think we're going to see North Carolina versus Duke once again for the championship game. And like I just mentioned, it's really tough to beat a team three times in one season. We saw North Carolina get the best of Duke twice. They obviously just beat them just a couple of days ago. I don't have the odds with me right now of who the favorite is for the tournament. I would tend to think it's probably North Carolina, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is Duke. But regardless of that, I think the Blue Devils get it done. They win their what would be their third straight ACC championship, would
Third
just be their
straight.
second straight. So it
I
would
think
be
it's
the
third
third.
straight.
I think it would be the third straight. If I'm not mistaken, this would be the first three-peat since 2009 to 2011 for winning the ACC championship. So I will give the Blue Devils their benefit of the doubt. They get the win, and that probably can potentially cement them as a number one seed in the NCAA tournament, depending on what happens for the rest of the league. So I will go with Duke for that one.
All right.
Um,
So we're
the
going to the
next,
Big Ten now,
we're
right?
going to go to the Big Ten now. Now, this is another one where a lot of teams are going to have to do some work, in my opinion, to get it done and make the NCAA tournament. We know about Purdue. They are going to be a lock no matter what. Obviously, they're the number one seed. Most likely will get the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. You have Illinois, who's had a pretty good season as well. They will be in the NCAA tournament as well. Iowa right now is a team that is on the bubble. They will need to do some work. Northwestern seems to be a team that's probably going to be in, as well as Wisconsin. Then we have the three
Don't
seed
forget about
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yep. Fred Hoiberg and his club are doing a great job. They will be in the tournament as well. I don't know if Indiana, you have to correct me if I'm wrong. Is Indiana right now in the tournament?
Indiana is a 4 seed in the NIT.
Oh,
That is where I have them placed.
okay. So never mind. So Indiana obviously will have to do a ton of work. I guess so. They are right now the sixth seed, but we essentially have. So what do we have? We have five teams that are a lock to make the tournament. Michigan State, obviously, in my opinion, I know we talked about this a couple weeks
I
ago.
think they're not a lot. I don't think they deserve it, but they're going to be a lock. They'll be they're a
Right.
10 seed right now, unless they lose to Minnesota and you have some really wacky stuff go on. They're in the tournament.
Honestly, I don't think that's necessarily an easy game for them to win. I could see them losing to Minnesota.
Golden Gophers.
That's a weird 8-9 matchup where Minnesota could easily pull that off, in my opinion. They have given some of the top teams in this conference this season a run for their money. So
Yeah, no,
I
they
wouldn't put it
definitely
past
have.
them.
They
And
definitely have it. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do because this is a team that hasn't really recovered in the last decade or so.
And I think for
Um,
me, the bit stealer for this conference is probably Ohio State because they've been getting really good at the last couple of weeks, and I think they could potentially give some of these teams a run for their money. I think they are the 10 seed for this tournament, so they can immediately knock off Iowa and knock them off the bubble and knock them out of the NCAA tournament with a win. And then I could see them maybe giving Illinois a run for their money. I don't know if they win that game, but they could easily be a team for me that can maybe make some noise in this tournament.
the big steal I'm looking at is ironically Indiana. They're gonna play a really bad Michigan or Penn State team in the first round, or I guess their first round, technically the second round.
Yeah.
They should beat them, and then they play Nebraska in the quarterfinals. I think Nebraska's just happy to be going to the tournament for the second time since 1998. They're locks
Yeah,
right now,
that's true.
so they're great. Fred Hoiberg's done a phenomenal job. He's brought that school back to some prominence. or since the 90s, I guess.
They have
And
the
I
third
think,
best odds.
yeah, that's
So
third best
there's that.
odds. But here's the IU thing I'm talking about. They should easily beat Michigan, Penn State. Nebraska overlooks them. Bam, in the semifinals. Now they're playing Ohio State, Iowa, Illinois, which I think is a winnable game for them. It's just the mountain that's on the other side that's going to be Purdue. If
Yeah.
Purdue does not get out of this bracket, then I don't know what they're doing. They're going to lose in the NCAA tournament in the first round again. But IU is going to have this fire under them. You see the articles of Mike Woodson saying he's tarnished their legacy. And you want to talk about tarnishing the legacy of Indiana basketball? The Indiana basketball fans have tarnished their legacy. If you listen, I realize the Indiana Hoosiers, Bob Knight, it is a historic program. They have multiple NCAA championships in the. I guess you can call it the modern era and start. I guess you can count in 1976. I think they got their first one in like the last 50 years. So they have won 76, 81, and 87. Runner up in 2002. They've got Sweet 16s galore. They've got Elite Eights galore. But when you take a look at when you talk about firing a coach, right, and probably the best coach you've had in the last decade or so, because God knows they've run every other coach out of that place. You could make an argument that Archie Miller was bad, sure. Tom Crean, I think he got a bad rap. At the end of the day, he got a bad rap here. But if you could run out Mike Woodson after making the NCAA's twice in a row, and like, oh, looks like he's gonna miss it this year. Guess we're gonna have to fire him. That would just be ridiculous. And I think any head coach would look at that job with massive red flags.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think it lights a fire under Indiana. So I think on the bottom side of the bracket, it gives them the best chance to make the finals out of any of those teams because those players are playing for something. They're playing for Mike Woodson. Mike Woodson's going to coach his ass off. So I think if there's any bid stealer here, it's going to be Indiana.
Okay.
But give me Purdue to win the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, there it is. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Purdue, like you said, this is Purdue's to lose. It would really be stunning if they didn't win. They are plus 100 odds to win it. Illinois coming in the second best favorite at 310, but I just don't see a scenario where the Boilermakers lose. They have such a great team on paper. Zach Edey is obviously the best player in the nation. They have to win this Big Ten tournament, and they need to do something in March because obviously after what happened last season, they need to make up for all those mistakes that they did, especially after losing to a 16 seed. So now, Johnson, we'll go to the Big 12 conference that I know you don't like.
It's overrated.
Um,
I know they've won 2 national championships, and I'm gonna have a
yeah.
certain listener out there that's a Big 12 fan. I know. Listen, you
Well,
guys have you
his
have
team
two
did not win today.
championships. Yeah, you have 2 championships in the last couple of years. The Big East literally died and reformed itself and won more championships since the Big 12 has been formed. So I don't want to hear anything about this. Big 12 is the best conference, and they have 3 championships in the last 25 years, where Big East probably has double that.
All right. I'm not a comment to that. So let's go into the conference itself. Obviously, looking at what we have right now for this Big 12 season, obviously, Houston is the quintessential favorite for the Big 12. They've had another monster year. They're going to get another number one seed. Um, they do have some competition, though, in this Big 12, and it's been a good year for the Big 12, obviously. Iowa has had a good year. Baylor is obviously the 3 seed. Texas Tech is number 4. BYU kind of stunned a lot of people with the way they played this season. They are the number 5. And we're in a scenario where Kansas right now, the number 6 seed, they will actually be playing tomorrow. I feel like that's the first time, maybe in a while, Johnson, that we're saying that Kansas is playing on day 2 of the Big 12 tournament. But that's where they stand right now. They will be playing Cincinnati tomorrow night. BYU will be playing UCF as UCF defeated Oklahoma State today. Running out the rest of the conference, Texas is the 7th seed, TCU is the 8, Oklahoma the 9, the 10 seed is Kansas State, then Cincinnati is the 11, UCF the 12, 13 is Oklahoma State, the 14 is West Virginia. Now, this is a conference that has a lot of teams that right now could be in the tournament. The top 6 are obviously all in right now. Texas, I believe, right now is in the tournament. They are an 8th seed. I don't know if there's any other team after that. I think TCU right now is a team that's currently in the bubble, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, the now that I'm thinking about it, it took me a second here.
Okay, yep.
I think it's every team that's not named, or I should say, teams seeds 10 through 14 are not going to be in the tournament, right? So I would say
Yeah.
Kansas State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, UCF. I think those are the ones I'm going to go with.
They would have to, like, I mean, for Cincinnati, Kansas State, obviously, they would have to make runs. I didn't even think Oklahoma. I don't think they're
You
necessarily
know
a
what? I,
lock
I don't
either.
think so. Here's my opinion. I'm gonna go on another rant here. I was trying to control myself before.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about bid stealers. Spoiler alert: seeds 6, 7, 8, and 9 in the Big 12 are all bid stealers. I'm sorry, 7, 8, and 9 are all bid stealers. Texas, TCU, Oklahoma, I think are all bid stealers, and they're gonna be in the tournament anyway. I think
Yeah.
include Kansas within. That's clearly the furthest thing from the truth, but. I think TCU, Oklahoma, and Texas all should not be in the tournament. That's my humble opinion. We've been over this with net metrics and how the Big 12 is a conference of frauds who got ousted by the ACC, who maybe only is going to have 2 or 3 teams in there. So I'm done with my rant. You can continue.
I think for me, I think Texas right now is the team to watch out for in this tournament because of where they're matched up right now in the bracket. If they could get past Kansas State, then they would play Iowa State in the second round. And no, that's not necessarily an easy game. Iowa State's had themselves a good year. But I think they could get past the Cyclones and win that game. And then after that, I could realistically see them beating the winner of Baylor and a potential Kansas. Kansas should beat Cincinnati to move on to the game against Baylor. And no matter if it's Baylor or Kansas, I think Texas can get the win against them as well. Texas is, I think, right now pretty much a lock. I don't know. I think it would take a lot for them
They're a
not to make
9
it.
seed. They're
Yeah,
either a 9 or a high 10.
I think they're an
So
8 or a 9 in the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. They are currently an 8 seed. They'd be playing Florida State, Florida Atlantic, excuse me, if the season ended today. But regardless of that, I think Texas, right, for me, is the bid stealer in this bracket. If I had to pick someone to win, I think it's hard to pick against Houston. I just think they're so dominant, and they're one of those teams that can really, make you, have to work for every bucket on the offensive side when they're playing defense. And then they have some great playmakers as well on their offensive side where they're going to score a bunch of points. They are pretty much a well oiled, rounded team. And I think come the tournament, they're going to be a tough team to play against. So I got the Cougars win the Big 12 this year.
give me Baylor, actually. I'm going to go ahead and pick against you. 3 seed in the Big 12. Scott Drew has done a phenomenal job here. One of the best coaches in college basketball. He's a championship. And I know it's not the same championship team from a couple years ago, the Mickey Mouse COVID championship, yada, yada, yada. Uh, Listen, I think they're 11th in the AP poll. They have NBA prospects. Jacoby Walter's been absolutely phenomenal this year. Just from the guys sitting on their bench to the star player, I think all of these guys can contribute and they all serve a purpose on this team like a well-oiled machine. So give me Baylor for the upset here because I don't even know if Houston makes it to the finals here.
Really?
Um, Listen, crazier things have happened in the Big 12 tournament. I could easily see a Texas Tech or a BYU upsetting them in the semifinals.
That's fair.
Houston, they are not God. It's not like they have Hakeem.
Well, yeah. All right, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. But I will say though, going into this next conference, I think this is a conference that you and I could both agree right now. There's guaranteed 6 teams are going to be in, and a potential
Yes.
seventh team at Texas A&M that could potentially make it. They're on the wrong side of the bubble, but easily could make it with a win or two in this conference tournament. Right now, you have the number 1 seed is Tennessee. They had a monster year. They are in line for a potential number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. The 2 seed is Kentucky. The 3 seed Alabama. The 4 seed is Auburn. The number 5 seed South Carolina. The 6 seed is Florida. You have the 7 seed, which is 1 second. I'm having Texas A&M. Excuse me. The 8 seed is LSU. The 9 seed is Mississippi State. The 10 seed is Ole Miss. The 11 is Georgia. The 12 is Arkansas. 13 Vanderbilt, and for an undoubtedly bad season for Missouri, unfortunately for them, they are the 14th seed.
I would call Missouri the DePaul of the Midwest, but they're unfortunately also in the Midwest. So
Yeah.
I can't be too DePaul. So maybe they should have a DePaul off.
DePaul off. Oh, God, that'd be really bad. That would be really bad. Can you add Seattle into that game? Because I saw that their record's also pretty bad.
Yeah, but I think since they're a high major, I would hope they would wax them, but you never know.
Yeah, yeah, you would hope. Anyway, though, we look at this conference, and I'll leave it up to you if you want to start off. Who do you think could potentially beat the bid stealer for the SEC champion
Gig 'em.
tournament?
Go Aggies.
Okay,
No, it's no surprise that I am a Aggies football fan. If I'm going to cheer for a college basketball team, it's obviously my Johnnies, but St. John's has been undefeated in college football since 2002, so
oh,
therefore I have to
Jesus.
cheer for the Texas A&M Aggies.
Why did I not? I'm not surprised you just said that. Anyway, go ahead.
True fact, by the way. You can't lose any games you don't play any. Anyways, go with the Aggies here. On the wrong side of the bubble, they're probably next four out after the first four, so I've
They are
probably
the
put them
first
somewhere
four
seven.
out if you go by Jordan Lenardi standard, but yeah,
Is of a number four, number three.
they're literally the first team.
Really? Okay, so they've turned it around a little bit. No, they were like the 16th team out and the 12th team out. They've been turning around. I think they'll beat Old Miss, and then it's just a matter of fact of running into the brick wall that is Kentucky. And this is the good thing and bad thing about Kentucky. The good thing is that any team in the country can beat them. The bad news is you have to score 95 points to do that. So do I
Right.
think I have Texas A&M has it in them to score 95 points? Maybe, which is why I'll put them in as a potential bid stealer. But with that being said, I see Kentucky winning this whole thing because I think they're going to just run teams out of the gym. John Calipari's had these guys conditioned all year. You're going to have 3 basketball games in 3 days, at least for any team in the quarterfinals. You're going to be gassed at Sunday afternoon, just trying to find your footing, find your legs. Your teams will be taking ice baths. Hey, Kentucky's been doing that all year, spreading up and down the court, run the fast breaks all year long. If they want to slow it down here, and you just give them more rest for the weekend. So it'd be Kentucky to win this, but A&M is my bid stealer.
I'm kind of stunned you took Kentucky to win. I'm not gonna lie. I did
I
not think you
took
would go
them
with
to win
them.
the national championship before the season even started last year, so I got to stick with my guns
That's
somewhat,
fair.
right?
That's fair. For me, I think Florida is a team to look out for in this tournament. They've had a really tough stretch down the end of the season. Obviously, things haven't gone their way. But if you look where they are in the bracket for the SEC tournament, I wouldn't even say they're a bit stealer because they're pretty much already a lock for the NCAA tournament. But you look at what the Gators have done this season and where they're currently ranked. They're currently the sixth seed in the SEC tournament, and they'd be facing Georgia or Missouri in the second round. So they should be able to get through that game. And then if they get to the quarterfinals, they would take on Alabama. And I think that's a very winnable game for Florida. They obviously just lost to them a couple weeks ago, but they kept it close. And I think they could get a win past the tide right there to move on to the semifinals. And in that semifinals game, they would have to take on the winner of Kentucky versus most likely Texas A&M. I could see them winning that game too because you mentioned it. Kentucky's inefficiency with defense has been a problem for them. The problem for the Gators is can they keep up with Kentucky's offense? That's where I don't know if that's going to happen. However, for me, and I was leading Kentucky all day, and then you picked Kentucky, and now I kind of changed. I'm thinking I'm going to change my pick on the fly. I'm going to go with Bruce Pearl at Auburn. I'm going to pick the
Oh,
Tigers
okay, I
of
like
Auburn to
it.
win it.
That's a dark horse.
They are obviously the 4 seed, and they would have to face I think South Carolina potentially in the quarterfinals. That is no easy
That scares me.
matchup. That's obviously a scary matchup, and obviously if they get, in my opinion, this: if they can get past South Carolina, then they would have to face I believe they would have to face Tennessee in the semifinals. I would feel very confident in Auburn beating Tennessee if they could get past South Carolina as well. Because then if they can beat South Carolina, I can really think to myself, okay, obviously it's not an easy matchup. You're facing Tennessee. It's not going to come easy for you in this matchup, but you would make a lot of noise if not only you beat South Carolina, but then you beat Tennessee and then potentially play Kentucky for the championship game. I think Bruce Pearl, if there's any coach in the SEC that could do it, it's certainly him. He's proven it in years past with Tennessee and now with obviously Auburn. I think this would be a fun ride for him. They're right now the second best favorite in the SEC tournament to win the whole thing. I got Auburn winning this SEC tournament. It was kind of a last second change because I was originally going with Kentucky until you said Kentucky. So I will go with Auburn for this one.
And last but certainly not least, we're going to the best conference in college hoops.
No bias.
Today, tomorrow, forever.
Yeah, no bias. No
Uh,
bias.
there's no bias. Listen, it's hard to be biased when you've won 8 or 9 NCAA tournaments since your inception 40 years ago. If you're winning on average a title every 6 years, and there's a Power Six conference, listen, I want to say Power Six, but you also have mid majors that have won it that not belong to Power Six. Listen, they've been good, and especially over the last decade when ESPN pronounced left the Big East for dead. You had BC lead, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and now all those programs are suffering. No offense, Nick,
Nah,
but
I
it
kind
makes
of
me
like
smile
lean.
every day to see that the ACC is going to crumble and the Big East is
I
going to
lean
survive.
more towards Syracuse football than their
Yeah,
basketball.
that's the root of all evil, though. The root of all
Yeah.
evil is college football. That is a lesson
Well,
learned
if
here.
not for college football, they would still be in the Big East because that's the truest statement of all time. They moved to the ACC
All these
because
teams would be.
yeah, exactly. Miami,
Because
Boston
there's
College,
sucky football
Miami, yeah,
teams need
Virginia Tech.
listen, bro. Boston College need to go 2-9 each year. Syracuse needs to go 3-7 each year.
Hey, Kyle McCord will bring us to
The
8
five
wins.
wins,
8.
five.
Shut up. We're getting off track. We're going to college football. I don't want to do that. We're still in March.
Anyway, let's talk
This
about the
is
greatest.
March Johnson.
Let's talk about the conference that was created in God's image Himself, the Big East. And listen, it is because they were all formed by the Catholic Seven. It was formed by St. John's and Seton Hall and Providence College and Georgetown. It was formed by the Catholic Seven here. It was formed. It was a Catholic university. So you had priests reffing the games before this happened. A historic conference that every single year culminates at Madison Square Garden, that Northeast corridor. So the teams from DC and New Jersey and Providence, Rhode Island and Manhattan, in Queens, New York, St. John's, New York's team, all these teams come together each and every year to crown the champion of the Northeast. Now, that being said, this Big East tournament, UConn is a heavy favorite. That's just the
Very
way
heavy
how it rolls.
favorite.
They've been probably the best team in the country all year long. With that being said, however, if you take a look at the Big East tournament this year, I still think you can have a couple of upsets here, and you have a couple teams that need to make a run here. So, with the number one overall seed, you have the UConn Huskies, heavy favorites. Number two overall, you got the Creighton Blue Jays, another top 10 team in the country. They throttled UConn at home a couple weeks ago by 20 points. No slouches. Marquette, coached by Shaka Smart, another great team, 3 seed. Then we have the 4-5 matchup, Seton Hall, St. John's, classic one. The 6-11, Villanova DePaul. The 7-10, Providence, Georgetown. The Ed Cooley Bowl, question
Yeah.
mark, maybe. And then the 8-9, Butler, Xavier, the new bloods of this expansive, of the new Big East. I guess you can't even call them new bloods anymore. It's the 10th anniversary at this
I
point.
know. They've been in it for a while.
Time flies. With that being said, UConn, the heavy favorite at minus 135. Creighton at plus 425. Marquette at plus 500. The Johnnies at plus 800. Villanova at plus 1600. Seton Hall at plus 3,000. The rest of the field is kind of irrelevant. You're burning money at that point. With that being said, Nick, who do you see being a bid stealer? Who needs work? Who's going to win the whole thing?
Well, I think we both know it's obvious that Providence and Villanova need work done in this tournament. Right now, Providence is the next 4 out. Villanova is the first 4 out. So both teams are going to essentially have to win 2 games in this tournament to even make the NCAA tournament. Now, for those two, at least they get the matchups that they get in. Georgetown has only won 2 conference games this season, both coming against DePaul. And DePaul, need I say more, they haven't won a conference game this year.
They got 3 wins on the season.
Now, you look at where they have to go after that. Providence, obviously, if they win against Georgetown, would face Creighton in the second round. I don't like the matchup necessarily for Providence. I don't see them getting the win in that one. For me, Villanova is probably the bid stealer to watch because I could see them being Marquette, especially if Tyler Kolek still cannot play for the Golden
Took
Eagles.
the words right out of my mouth.
And then I could see them getting past Creighton. You saw their last game just a couple days ago. They were down as many as 24 points in that game, and they almost won. Lost on a last-second shot to the Blue Jays. Villanova
Trey Alexander.
Exactly. Trey Alexander made a great shot, and it was nothing Villanova could have done. They played great defense all through that game. I could see Villanova having a good case to making, and it pains me to say it, but I could see Villanova being in the championship game for this Big
I'm rooting
East
for
tournament.
him.
Obviously, it would help our metrics because St. John's beat them twice in the season, so that would really help the Johnnies in that case. But for Villanova, they have a really good opportunity, in my opinion, to make it. Now, for us, it's essentially if you beat Seton Hall, you're in the tournament. That's where it comes down to for St. John's. If you lose, you're praying for all utter chaos at this point from other teams. And for Seton Hall, I think essentially they're already in. If they lose to St. John's, then it would be a scenario where they'd be a
You don't
last
want to
four
find
in.
out.
Right. If they lost to St. John's, then they would be in a scenario where they would be a last four team in, but they would have to hope for no bid stealers or for any other teams on the bubble stealing that spot for them. So obviously you don't want to find that out. And for St. John's, obviously losing to them twice in the season, you want to avoid that third straight loss because they could have beat them. It definitely in one of the games. The first time they played, it was all Seton Hall. But the second game, you and I both know they should have won. We were there in person to witness that unfortunate collapse.
Oh, my mind was actually wiped by the FBI after that game. I don't remember anything.
I was watching the Rangers Islanders Stadium Series game for most of the second half, so I was kind of glad that I was a little bit distracted as that game was going on. But for me, as much as I want to pick St. John's to win it, it's tough to pick against UConn. I think they are the favorite, obviously. I think they get it done. They win the Big East, and they'll be a number one seed going into the NCAA tournament this season once again, and they'll essentially be one of the top favorites to win the NCAA championship for the second straight season.
Yep, I have
So
to
go
go to
ahead.
University of Connecticut, but I hope they lose in the
Okay.
first round. Listen, this is my mush. St. John's, you need to win a game, and this is going to bring us into our final segment here, and we're going to talk about the first, the
Who do you think the last
four
four
in.
teams will be in?
Excuse me. So St. John's, win this game, so I don't have to sweat on Sunday, please. I realize it's March 12th, and we're still on the right side of the bubble, and I'm appreciative of that. But please, don't be like Cody Rhodes and finish your story here. Thanks.
All right, so being that as in May Johnson, let's now, with Selection Sunday happening Sunday, we've gone over some of the brackets for these conference tournaments. Who do we think are going to be the final four teams into the bracket, and that will be celebrating on Sunday, making the NCAA tournament?
I'm going to have to go with my first two picks here. I'm going to go with St. John's.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Villanova. I think they win these two games and they beat Marquette, and that's enough to kind of put them in the right side of a bracket. And then the next two, I'm really not sure because there's so much potential for bid stealers. There's people that can kind of steal things from them. So I'm not really too sure on who those last two teams are going to be. If push comes to shove, maybe Texas A&M. I want to see the Aggies get in there. Maybe they can move up. And I'm going to say that New Mexico is the last team in. I'm going to say they're going to want the Patino Bowl. St. John's as, I guess, the quote-unquote 1 seed of the 11s, and New Mexico is the 4. Make the Patino Bowl happen in Dayton. They need ratings.
Okay. It would be kind of foul for me not to pick my team, so I'm going to put St. John's in. That could be a very dangerous thing though for me doing that because it's essentially.
Well, what happens if they're not the last 4 in? Like, what if they're like they get at large, like just get like a 10 seed?
Sure, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me either.
Yeah, I hear you.
I agree with you on Villanova as well. I already kind of like sold it with how the bracket looks out for them, and I think they have a really good chance of making the championship game. Will that happen? I can't guarantee it, but they have a lot to play for more than the other two teams they potentially would have to face in Creighton and Marquette. So I think when you have a team like that, that's kind of dangerous to play against, where all the chips are on the table for them and they have to, their backs are against the wall. So I like Villanova to make it as well. And now it comes down to the last two. I think for me, I think Virginia is going to be one of those last teams in. I'm concerned though if they lose in their second game because they could play Clemson potentially in their next matchup, and there's not a guarantee they win that game. Obviously, Clemson is a good team, and they're obviously in the tournament, but I don't think it would necessarily be an end-all be-all loss if they won. Obviously, if they win, they're in. If they lose, then they're going to be obviously on the bubble, and hopefully that one of those last teams in. Do I want to see Virginia in? Not necessarily, because their offense is really bad. I don't want to see 44-40 finals in the NCAA tournament, but I think they get it done. And you kind of sold me with the last thing. I think New Mexico gets in too. I kind of want the Patino Bowl to happen as well. That would make for great television ratings. They've already, kind of teased in the last couple of weeks in the media with potential of this happening. If not New Mexico, I think Colorado would be the next team for me to get in. I think they have a lot going for them. They could lose to Utah, obviously, in their second round. That's kind of what we're hoping for as St. John's fans. We need Utah to have good metrics for our win. But I think Colorado can get it done, and I could see them being in the Pac-12 championship game. So I'll put them in as one of my. I'm not going to put them in as there because I'm going to think that Utah, hopefully for our sake, defeats Colorado in the second round to get past Arizona State. So I'll go with New Mexico as my final team. So kind of similar to what we had. The only difference being Virginia and Texas A&M.
And with that being said, Nick, before we sign off, do you have anything to say about March, or are you done?
This is March.
This is March. That's all I have to say as well. I'm looking forward to these next couple days, and no one bother me every weekend in March.
Especially on Thursday. We have a Thursday's going to be a long day. Johnson, I forgot about it. I'm going to be working on Thursday too, so I'm going to have to watch the game on my phone while I'm working.
I will be in a meeting, so hopefully it's a long meeting and I don't have to watch this game. I just see a win at the end.
Not ideal. Not ideal. But we're hopeful that our Giants will have their names called on Selection Sunday this upcoming Sunday. So the next couple of days will certainly be a wild ride in the world of college basketball. But for us here at the All Gas No Break Sports Show, that's going to do it for today's show as we recapped the Power 6 and 3 mid-major conferences for this upcoming conference championship week. We are just a few days away now from Selection Sunday, just 5 days to be exact as of this recording, from finding out the field of 68 for this year's NCAA tournament. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.